Thank you very much. It's a true honor to be here this morning. Todd Sledge, thank you for I know you're around here. There you are. Thank you so much for reaching out to me. When Todd reached out to me, and we text back and forth a lot with his work at the VA locally and my work with WCPO, I know that I can always reach out to Todd whenever I need to get something accomplished for a veteran. And Todd reached out to me and said, hey, would you be willing to come and be our guest speaker? I think I replied to him in about less than 60 seconds that yes, absolutely. You know, working in the career field of television broadcasting, I've been honored to not only cover and share stories of our nation's heroes through my segment Homefront, but I've been able to report on events that are actually written in our history books. Documenting such history is really a privilege and one I take very seriously. Often I get asked by a number of high school tour groups how I got into broadcasting. My reply is always that I came through, again, a more non-traditional route. I explained to them that I joined the U.S. Air Force straight out of high school. Again, the first part of my journey, as you heard, was in law enforcement, eventually resource protection, and with a top secret clearance, the Air Force sent me to a course and taught me how to pick locks and defeat alarm systems so I could turn the base security into a better situation. I did have to sign documents when I left that I would not use those skills for evil. I may or may not have picked a few locks since then, only to get my wife into, a home or two. So, in 1997, I cross-trained into broadcast journalism and again worked for Air Force News. That job afforded me the amazing opportunity overseas to deploy to a variety of countries and locations, telling the stories of the men and women serving in our country's military, as well as the expats who continue to live overseas in their post-service life, many of them World War II veterans. Those stories and events I covered were all part of the very fabric of our country's military history. So if history isn't shared, there are a couple of things that, of course, can happen. It will repeat itself or be lost forever. I've told the story in Anderson Township of Rick Hast, who was in Vietnam. His unit was ambushed. He ended up carrying Rocky Bleier, Pittsburgh Steeler, out of the jungle to safety and saved his life. Those are the types of stories I've told. And when you talk about our greatest generation, every day, according to the World War II Museum, 131 World War II veterans leave us. From 16 million who served, now only 119,000 approximately are still with us. Each day, a story that is not shared is unfortunately lost to the younger generation. And I've been able to share some amazing stories of World War II heroes in our community. Julian Wills from Grant County, Kentucky, was sent off to Pearl Harbor. He was sent over to a nearby sandy beach and told to defend that beach in case another Japanese attack came in. He had only 10 rounds of ammunition. True story. 102-year-old Art Fasaro in Cincinnati, he was key to the main line of communications between General Omar Bradley and General Patton. He ended up celebrating VJ Day in Honolulu. Now, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor, those 16 million Americans I mentioned just moments ago, well, they joined in on that fight, and they served during that war. Just over 400,000, as we know, would pay the ultimate price. On March 8th, 1944, a B-17 known as Return Engagement took off from England on a bombing run to go hit targets in Berlin, Germany. Now, this plane and its crew had done this a number of times, and they knew all too well what the Germans were capable of when it comes to taking down Allied aircraft. On that March morning, the B-17 would circle like the other aircraft, trying to get to around 25,000 feet before heading over the English Channel. To do so any earlier, of course, could mean that they could be easily picked off by the surface guns as they approached the other side of the channel, where the Germans' anti-aircraft batteries, of course, were waiting. As the flight went along, the gunners kept a close watch on the skies surrounding their bomber, knowing German fighters could be on them at a moment's notice. The navigator kept a close eye on the waypoints to ensure their path was on track to get to the objective. Suddenly, 20-millimeter rounds began piercing the very thin sheets of metal, the skin of the aircraft. The bomber's gunners began their attack, but in the end, the B-17 was no match for those fighters. Knowing the plane was literally shredded from the tail to the cockpit, the crew began preparing to bail out, in hopes of landing safely and attempting to evade capture by the German ground forces. Just then, a 20-millimeter round burst through the side of the aircraft, hitting the navigator in the head, exploding, killing him instantly. The remaining crew bailed out, and one of the crew recalls watching the aircraft return engagement as he parachuted down, its nose pointed toward the ground with all bombs still on board. The only one to go down with the plane, Errol Luganville, my great-uncle. Every year for Memorial Day, I buy a new American flag to ensure it is in the best condition for this day. I always fly it proudly outside my home 24 hours a day, and some driving by or walking by may just see the red, white, and blue stripes, some stars, a symbol of our country, a fabric flag with perhaps a little more meaning than that. I see it as a true symbol of anguish, determination, perseverance, strength, struggle, and most of all, freedom. I know when it flies, it is a beacon of hope for so many. When you think about all that it stands for me, it is clear that why when America is poked, we poke back. And Americans from across our great country answer the call time and time again. We've seen it. On Memorial Day, I remember the sacrifice of my great-uncle and that of the hundreds of thousands throughout our country's history who swore to defend this country and serve all allies as well. While so many Americans will enjoy this weekend and have enjoyed this weekend in the same manner they always do, many others like yourselves take this moment to honor those who did not come home. Those who continue to die here at home after the war from the effects of defoliants used in Vietnam or the burn pits during the Gulf War and most recent missions in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. Now, I don't fault them for not seeing beyond the Memorial Day sales, the picnics, the ball games. They are taking advantage of the very things that all of us who signed that dotted line protected with our service. You see, we are the small percent of Americans who have raised that right hand to swear an oath. And we do so to afford freedoms for those who do not. We do so to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America from all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, I tell you my great-uncle's story of service because I think it's critically important to remember the service of everyone who has sacrificed and shown all of us their sheer determination to serve, again, the greatest country on this planet. Some here today may have said just a few words about your time serving in combat. Perhaps you haven't shared anything with your friends or family. I hope you change that. I hope you begin to open up. I encourage you to share your own family histories and ensure the younger generation knows just how fragile our democracy is. And that when someone comes to our doorstep, and they will, time and time again, the men and women of our armed forces will fulfill that oath and keep our country safe. Now, no one says, I want to sign up and go serve my country to die. But we do say that if it happens, I know that I died to ensure my fellow Americans have a better life. It's putting country before self, and in doing so, creates a thread that bonds all of us who've sworn that allegiance. And think about that for a moment. From the Spanish-American War and the Civil War, World War I, II, Korea, Vietnam, Gulf War, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and so many more, we who have served are all one big family. We are forever bonded, and as such, take this time to remember our fellow brothers and sisters whose journey ended, but their legacy lives on in our nation's history. Thank you.
Free, U.S. Navy. Judson Ken Ingerston served in the U.S. Army as medic in the Philippines. Captain Philip McKee. Captain Chris Bordani. Lieutenant Captain Josh Klinger. Alan Pillen, USMC Vietnam. Mike Third Cattle, U.S. Marine Corps, Vietnam. Jim Melvin, USMC, Vietnam. Captain Brandon Barrett. Ben Howard, U.S. Crew Chief, Vietnam. Stanley Rogers, U.S. Army. Sergeant David A. Orlando. SFC Dave Edwards. Kent Henshine. John Justice. Jerry Hood. Richard Wamsley, World War II Navy. Romeo Berge, World War II Army. Bernie Burgle, World War II Army. Mike Suber, Vietnam Marine Corps.
Dennis Fries. Peter Lowry, U.S. Army. Arthur Blocksage, U.S. Army. Donald Bishop, U.S. Marine Corps. John Philip Ruse, U.S. Marine Corps. Sonny Tucker, Marine Corps, Korea. Robert Tucker, U.S. Army, Vietnam. Robert Breving, Air Force, Korea. Richard Sonnenberg, U.S. Army, Korea. William Weber, U.S. Army, Air Corps, World War II. Jeffrey Weber, U.S. Navy, Vietnam. George Weber, U.S. Army, World War I. Laverne Madison. Private First Class Raymond Schickling, World War II, U.S. Army. Edward A. Johnson. Frank Gregory, Tech, U.S. Army, World War II. Army Corporal George Leo Dietz. Paul Dobmeyer, Air Force, World War II. Wilfred Sunderhouse, World War II, Navy. Tom Sunderhouse, World War II, Navy. John Stoops, Vietnam, Marine Corps. David Perry Tyndall, World War II. Carl Aaron Sizer. William F. Gerth, Marine Corps.